when it comes to the Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets in this game five, who do you think is going to win and why?
So I want to pick Denver, right? Because I don't want to sleep on Nikola Jokic. I don't want to doubt him. I don't want to sit here and pretend like he is not one of the, if not the best player in the NBA, depending on who you ask. But because of Phoenix finally trusting some vets, Phoenix finally leaning on their bench and saying, yo, we need help, I think that has alleviated the pressure off enough of Kevin Durant. Because Devin Booker's been getting buckets all postseason. It's Kevin that has been a little inconsistent. Yes, Kevin scored double digits. Yes, he scored in the 20s. But when we talk about efficiency from the field, those bad shots after a few attempts can make a lead grow for the other team or just overall kind of leave your offense stagnant to an extent. I think that with them discovering they can trust Terrence Ross, Landry Shamet can hit some timely shots. Cameron Payne has not necessarily stepped up, but has filled the role of a starting point guard pretty solid. I think that Monty Williams has gotten this team rallied up, excited, and to show that they can still compete in these playoffs. You know that there's a problem when your best player in Denver is scoring 50 some odd points and you're still losing the game when your second best player goes for 28. That's over 30 points. You can't be losing games like that. Outputs like that don't happen every day. Yes, your superstars have to try, but to have nights like this where they do score 80 and you still lose, that's not a good look. Michael Porter Jr.'s got to step up huge. And the role players of the Denver Nuggets need to find ways to put the ball in the hoop and alleviate some of that pressure off of Nikola Jokic, like the Phoenix Suns have been doing for Devin Booker and KD the last two games. Overall, I'll just keep it brief. I got Phoenix winning because I think the momentum has shifted to the point where I think that they're going to maybe even take the series. And depending on the outcome of whatever happens with this Nikola Jokic scuffle, if he misses time, if it causes a disruption, I don't know. I think that Denver may be in trouble because if you can't win with 80 points combined between your two best players, I'm not really seeing another opportunity for you to steal one away from Phoenix right now.
And I'm actually going to go in the opposite direction. I am going to go with Denver in this one. And Kev, when we looked at this series as a whole so far, the home team has definitely been the biggest benefactor. With both home teams, with Denver winning both games one and two, and then Phoenix winning games three and four, respectively, at home. I think that trend is going to continue. And for me personally, I'd have to see it go in the other direction before I believe it, just because, when you're 4 games in and home court advantage definitely has seemed to play a factor in this series. I'm going to roll with Denver in this one. And when I look at Denver, I think that when it comes to how they're going to win this game five, I think it's going to be more on the defensive side because when you give up almost 130 points in game four, I bet you Mike Malone is going to make that adjustment when they're looking at film. It's like, guys, we have to ramp up the defensive intensity. We have to slow down Devin Booker and KD more effectively because you look back at that game four, Dev and KD were extremely effective with both of them dropping 36 points respectively. And like Kev said earlier, Devin Booker, when it comes to how effective that he's been in this series so far, that's the biggest problem that they have to address. I mean, it got to the point where Denver was sending double teams against Dev in game four, and he was still knocking down shots behind the 3-point line. So I think they're going to take a very similar template when it came to how they adjusted to be able to slow down Dev and KD in the fourth quarter of game four. But they're going to have to find a way to be able to effectively close out their role players because Landry Shamet popped off huge in the fourth quarter for Phoenix. And I think this is going to be one of those scenarios where if Phoenix were to win this game, it's going to be because Denver's going to lock down on KD and Dev as best as possible, and the role players are going to step up. If Denver loses that way, then that's going to be something that they're going to have to accept. But I think overall, I'm actually expecting a lower scoring game than what we saw in game four. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love an offensive game as much as the next guy. But if I had to guess, I think Denver's going to have to come out with the mindset of trying to keep Phoenix around 100 points. If they are able to keep them under 100 points, that's going to serve them even better. And they have been able to prove that. They did that in game two in probably one of the more uglier games that we've seen in this series so far. But, it's going to be Jokic. Jokic is going to lead the way. Jokic is probably going to put up somewhere around 25, 30 points. Jamal's going to put up at least somewhere around 20 to 25 points consistently. But They're going to have to get better contributions from their role players. Michael Porter Jr., he's got to step up. He has relatively been inconsistent throughout not just this playoff series, but throughout most of the playoffs so far. And I don't know if he's going to go out there and score 20, 25 points. I highly doubt that. But if he can get you 15 points, it gives you something to work with. You know, this is one of those games where Denver's going to have to step up the defensive intensity, and they're going to have to hope to God that they could slow down Dev and KD, because if they can't, Denver's going to be in a bad situation. And when it comes to Phoenix, Phoenix is going to have to be able to slow down Jokic. Jokic just dropped 53 points in game 4. I mean, Jokic, I think Kev brought up this stat earlier. Only Jokic and Will have been able to put up, I think it's now multiple 50-point playoff game performances.
Yeah.
And, you know,
At the center position.
The center position, which is just utterly crazy, just how effective Jokic has been, relatively speaking, in the short amount of playoff time that he's played so far in his career. Phoenix is not going to allow a 53-point performance again against Jokic, but I still think Jokic is going to go out there and be extremely effective for Denver. It's just overall, I think this is going to be a much more competitive game than we saw in some of these earlier games. Maybe like if you look back to game 1 was relatively solid when it came to Denver's performance over Phoenix. But overall, I think it's going to be a very back and forth game. It's going to be a competitive one, but I'm going to give a slight edge to Denver in this one. They would go up 3-2 in the series. And Kevin, I'm going to be honest with you, I think this series has 7 games written all over it. Just because I think home court advantage is really going to play a factor for both teams. So even though I think Denver's going to win game 5, I think there's a very good chance that Phoenix can respond and win game 6. But in this game 5 specifically, I'm going to go with Denver to go up 3-2 in the series.